What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to talk about soloing over the bar line. The first step in improvising over different chords is learning what the chord symbols mean and what scales go with them, and of course playing the correct scale at the right time over the correct chord symbol. The next step, and the step that we're going to dive into today, is connecting those chords, connecting the scales that go together from one chord to the next. Oftentimes when a new improviser starts playing these chords, they think about them as completely separate entities. In other words, they look at the first chord and they only play the notes in the first chord. Then they look at the second chord and they only think about the notes in the second chord. They don't see how they're related, so they don't really play what I call over the bar line. In other words, like in the beginning, the example I just played, I played 2 bars of A major 7 and then 2 bars of A minor 7. So if you're thinking about them as two completely different things, you're going to play A major 7, stop, and then play A minor 7, stop, then go back to A major 7, stop, and go back to A minor 7 and stop. So it would sound like this. Now, both of those scales and chords and everything is correct. You can hear I'm playing A major 7 and then A minor 7, but they are not connected at all. I'm playing this one chord, stopping, and then playing this next chord. So today we're going to talk about how to connect those two chords. Before we talk about connecting the chords, if you enjoy my content, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. One of my next videos will be a question and answer video. So if you have a question for me about anything, it could be how to play something, about my background as a musician, anything you're curious about, ask me a question in the comments below, and later this week I will do a Q&A video. All right, so let's talk about connecting these chords. So the first thing you have to do is figure out what is similar and different in the scale. So in the example that I played in the beginning, and the example I'm going to use throughout this whole thing, is 2 measures of A major 7 and 2 measures of A minor 7. Now, when we are doing the A major 7, we know it is based on the A major scale and it has 3 sharps. So it has F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, and it sounds like this. When we get to the A minor 7 chord, we have a couple scales that we could choose from. We are going to use the A Dorian minor, and we're going to do that for 2 reasons. 1, it just sounds better in this context, and 2, it has the most similar notes to the A major 7 chord. So we want to stick with the scale that has the most similar notes. Now, the A Dorian minor scale only has an F sharp, so it's A to A with the F sharp, and it sounds like this. So in this example, we're dealing with 2 scales, A major 7 and A minor 7, which we're using the Dorian minor scale. There are only 2 notes that are different in the A major scale and the A Dorian minor scale, and that is the C sharp, which is your 3rd, and the G sharp, which is your 7th. So all we have to think about when we're going from the A major 7 chord to the A minor 7 chord is change from the C sharp to the C natural and the G sharp to the G natural. So instead of thinking about 2 completely different scales, think about what's similar between the 2. And that is everything but the C sharp and the G sharp. So take a listen to what that would sound like. I'm going to play this with the track, and all I'm going to do is change my key signature. I'm going to be playing like a scale-wise type solo, and as soon as I get to A minor 7, all I'm going to do is change to C naturals and G naturals. Did you hear how much more naturally that line flowed? It wasn't play this chord, stop, play this chord, stop, go back to this chord, stop, play this chord, stop. Everything just kept going. All I did was change the notes that were appropriate for each chord. So that is your first step. When you look at these 2 chords and the scales that correspond to them, look at what notes are similar and what notes are different. Instead of thinking about them as completely different scales, think about how they go together and what small changes you need to make to make one flow into the next. The next thing that we need to talk about is when you are changing between chords, you don't always want to start on the 1, especially in a situation like this when the 1 is the same, which is an A, because we're going from A major 7 to A minor 7. So if you're always starting on the 1, it's always going to sound like you're starting over and you're not going to connect them very well. Also, the 1 is being played by the bass player and most likely by the chord player also. So we don't really need to play the 1 to let us know what chord we're playing. So this is what it sounds like when you start on the 1 all the time. When you do that, it just kind of sounds like you're playing scales. Whereas if you switch the key signature to fit the chord halfway through what you're playing, it doesn't sound like a scale, it just sounds like a line, and that's what we're going for. We don't want our improvisation to sound like scales. If we don't bring out the 1, the root, the tonic in the chord, then what note should we bring out? The answer to that is almost always going to be the 3rds and the 7ths. Those are the ones that determine the quality and the flavor of the chord. So you want to bring that out, because that is like letting you know what kind of scale, what kind of chord it is, whether it's major or minor, or whether you have a major 7th or a minor 7th. So especially in a chord progression like this, we're going from A major 7 to A minor 7. The big difference is the C sharp to the C and the G sharp to the G. So you want to bring out the differences, and that's usually going to be the 3rds and the 7ths. I'm going to play an example where I'm switching mainly with the 3rds and the 7ths, and you're going to hear how strong that makes the chord changes and how easy it is to hear the difference between the two. So that is also known as voice leading. Voice leading is the way you get from one chord to another, and a really strong way to use voice leading is with 3rds and 7ths. Did you hear how clearly you could hear the chords change when I brought out the 3rds and 7ths? It really made those lines come together and you could really hear the chord change. And it connected those chords so that you had a line that went through both chords as opposed to stopping and starting. So that's really what we want to concentrate on when we're talking about soloing over the bar line. The last step that we're going to talk about today is anticipating the next chord. So we're playing over that A major 7 chord, a beat or two before the A minor 7 chord is coming, we might anticipate that chord change by changing the scale and changing the chord a little bit before so that we are creating a little bit of anticipation. And you can hear that dissonance that will be resolved as soon as the chord changes. So that's a really great way to make it sound like you're not just playing this chord, then this chord, then this chord, then this chord. By anticipating the next chord, that really makes those chords come together because it gives you a little dissonance and then it gets resolved with the next chord. Take a listen to what I'm talking about. So you could hear that next chord coming before I got there because I was playing the 3rd or 7th before I got there. So that gave me an anticipation, created a little bit of dissonance, but it resolved right away as soon as we got to that correct chord. So anticipating a chord change is a really hip and cool way to connect your lines and make everything sound really smooth and clean. So when you put it all together, your solos go from sounding like this to soloing over the bar line and sounding like this. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you now understand how to solo over the bar line, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment.